Mesdames et messieurs, il est 14 heures. Bonjour l'Europe depuis le cœur de Paris, depuis le peur de Bois, depuis de mon cœur à moi-même. Bienvenue au Forum Bois Construction et bienvenue au WoodCircus pour le lancement et la discussion sur son livre blanc. Nous sommes heureux de vous accueillir au Grand Palais Ephémère à Paris. Un magnifique écran de la structure est en bois. Et je veux bien constater, le WoodCircus est bien là. Mesdames et messieurs, je m'appelle Andreas Nikolaus Kleinschmidt von Lengefeld. En bref, c'est Andreas. Et je suis aujourd'hui votre maître de conférence en coopération et soutien avec ma chère collègue, professeur Andrea Kutna, à gauche de moi. Elle est la directrice et à la tête InnoRenew à Isola en Slovénie. Et aussi en coopération que vous voyez dès que possible, professeur Anne-Christine Ritschkoff de VTT en Finlande. Malheureusement, elle est bloquée là-bas, elle ne peut pas venir à cause de la situation, la crise sanitaire qui n'est pas finie. Mesdames et messieurs, cette séance est, comme dit, totalement en anglais, mais on a aussi une traduction. Vous pouvez trouver les casques à l'entrée. Je vais changer en anglais dès que possible, mais n'inquiétez pas, si vous avez des questions en français, bienvenue, vous pouvez intervenir. Wenn Sie in Deutsch Fragen haben, das können wir auch beantworten. And now I will leave the floor to Anne-Christine. Take your headsets if you need any translation. Any language that is spoken in Europe is present today here at the Grand Palais Ephémère in Paris, so we can manage. You're highly welcome, and I leave the floor now and welcome to Anne-Christine from Finland, directly from Espoo. Anne-Christine, the floor is yours. Hope that you can see us.
Yes, I can see you, and hopefully you can see me and also.
Perfect.
So, good afternoon, everybody, ladies and gentlemen, the audience, distinguished panelists and moderators, and of course my dear WoodCircus artists and acrobats. So as Andrea already said, that I'm here in Finland, so greetings from the very hot Finland. I think that we have the hottest weather in Europe at the moment. And I warmly welcome you to this WoodCircus White Paper discussion and launching event at the Grand Palais Ephémère. We are so happy to have this event in this very, very great wooden construction. I'm so sorry that I can't see it live, but maybe I can visit Paris later on. And this really shows what we can do with wood. So wood is a great material. We are still living very difficult times and nothing is self-evident. I was supposed to be there in Paris with you, but in the most latest moment I learned out that I'm exposed, and so I'm greeting you remotely here from Finland. Well, WoodCircus is a Horizon 2020 project which is funded by the European Commission. It has 17 European partners from 7 different countries. The partners are from research organizations, from the companies, and different wood processing, woodworking sectoral associations like European Panel Federation, like the Finnish Sawmill Association, and so forth. One of the main goals of WoodCircus is to foster the circularity within the sector and also to identify, transfer, and implement those very good circular practices what the sector's companies has already adopted. So we try to learn from each other, and for that we also want to foster the circularity and the competitiveness of the sector via transferring to circularity. The project has been ongoing for 2 years now, a little bit more as a matter of fact, and during this final year we prepare a white paper with recommendations for the help and the benefit of the sector, but also those regional, national and EU decision makers to help this sector to take its place in the green growth agenda and sustainable future. So having said that, I would like to thank all our panelists, our moderators, the Grand Palais Ephémère, the City of Paris, European Commission, and of course my dear WoodCircus colleagues, and of course you audience, whether on the spot or remotely, for making this event possible and successful. My special thanks goes to my dear co-coordinator, colleague, and very dear friend, good friend Andreas, and of course to our excellent communication manager, to Kaisa, who have done a great and a lot of work to make this event happen there at the Grand Palais Ephémère today. I also would like to thank Andrea for her flexibility to step in a very, very short notice. And once again, I would like to warmly welcome you to join the circus. Have an inspiring, interesting, and fruitful event with us. Thank you, and I hand over to Andreas and Andrea now.
Thank you so much, Anne-Christine. I would like to welcome also our Professor Andrea Kuttner, our dear Andrea. Andrea, could you please quickly introduce yourself and what you think before we then present our dear panelists? And one is on screen hopefully soon. That is our dear Silvia Melegari, the Joint Secretary General from the European Sawmill organization and also from the Confederation of European Woodworking. And Silvia, we can see you. Ciao Italia, and congratulations to the Euro 2021 and to the European Song Contest. Not bad. So Andrea, please introduce yourself a little bit, what you think, and then I think we welcome our panelists.
Thank you, Andreas, and it's my great pleasure to be here today. It's not that hard to step in when you need to come to Paris for the awesome event in this great auditorium. So I'm a professor in wood science at the University of Primorska in Slovenia and director of InnoRenew Center of Excellence, which is a newly established research institute focusing on wood use in construction in relation to the well-being, in 3 words, I would say. But I believe that today here we are perfectly on the spot in Europe discussing the climate change issues, and Fit for 55 that was launched yesterday, and I believe we can be addressing also the activities that were announced that will have to happen in the future in Europe. And I believe that today's discussion will also let us to think about innovations in the wooden construction sector and beyond that are needed in order to be achieving the targets.
We are only the acrobats of the wood circus. We are at the service for the whole sector to position ourselves. But mostly welcome to our dear panelists who accepted the kind invitation to be here today and to discuss the circular economy concept, and specifically what woodworking and wooden construction already is today and can do even more in future. And I would like to start by introducing probably Silvia Melegari. I hope we can see her on screen. Silvia, there he is. I know Silvia for a long time, but this doesn't mean she started very young, if you allow me to put it like this. Silvia is the voice for the European woodworking industries for CI Bois and EOS. She's very engaged. And she has an outstanding career track in the whole sector. She had been appointed Joint Secretary General for the Boss associations, which are the core and the driving motor of the circular economy, but also of the forest-based sector in Europe. Without sawmill industries, we would not have a dynamic and well-functioning forest-based sector, and plus everything that is connected to there. So Silvia is participating from home, from Italy today. Unfortunately, she cannot be with us, but that gives us a very strong French because La Forza Italia is with us. And secondly, I would also like to introduce from our panelists, Oriana Romano from the OECD. Thank you so much for having accepted the invitation to be with us. Oriana leads the OECD program on the circular economy in cities and regions, and it couldn't be better to discuss with you today also how you see right now, and I know that you're working strongly on this aspect, specifically with the with the objectives, how do we realize the sustainable development goals of the United Nations, and as Andrea perfectly said yesterday, it was launched by the European Commission, Fit for 55, how do we implement and realize the objectives of the Green Deal. Very welcome, Oriana. I'll leave it to Andrea to introduce the two gentlemen with us.
Yeah, that's my pleasure. It's first one is Ernest Schillinger from Switzerland, and I would say the one that is the supporter of not only the wood use, but also the wood use in the substitution efforts. And I believe he will be sharing with us today also the aspects of which materials and which purposes can be actually the future for the wooden material. And the next one is Guy Weinand, and also from Switzerland, and I have to apologize because I'm pretty sure I pronounced it wrongly, the names, and but famous architect that brought us, the society, many very nice projects that should be inspiring us to also be building in the future. But I would say that I'm pretty sure today we will also hear how some of his projects could be also be discussed at the end of a life cycle. So how can we recycle them? If I can trigger this as a potential discussion point of these awesome projects that you were able to create.
So let's call Finland. Ann-Christine, would you like to kick off the discussion with the panelists with the first question and some thoughts?
Okay, now I managed to unmute myself. Yes, of course, I would be happy. And I start with a very, very easy question. What kind of role wood could have in the future urban development? What would it need, and also when will we see to have this kind of wooden Manhattans or wooden Tokyos? It's a very, very small and easy question for you, but I would like to start with that.
I think, Oriana, may I ask you to start? It sounds very much that this is in your field of expertise. It should be on.
It's on? Can you hear me?
Yes, very well.
Okay, great. So first of all, thank you very much for having me, contributing to this debate. I was just discussing with Eve, like, what the OECD can do while you are here. I'm not an engineer, I'm an economist, so my perspective is probably different from yours, working on these issues every day. But what we do, and Christine mentioned urban development, is exactly this. So in the program I work with many cities from all around the world, OECD and non-OECD countries. Well, first of all, I guess that all of you knows what the OECD is, but the Organization for Economic Cooperation and Development is an intergovernmental organization of 38 member countries. So what we do is to support these countries, so government, local government, regional and national ones, in defining, for example, policies reforms and, of course, implementation. And when it comes to the circular economy, we face lots of question marks. It's something that increasingly governments are very interested in, and you work in a sector whereby probably for you the circular economy is not a new concept, and perhaps a few years ago was not called this way. But for many stakeholders, this is something very incipient. So having an understanding on how policies can work to transition from a linear to a circular economy in which basically you prevent waste generation, you make sure that things are in use as long as possible, so you increase the life of product and goods, and also you make sure that you transform waste into resources, is something that is not easy when it is applied at policy level, at urban policy level. We have to deal not just with waste, not just with water, not just with energy. We have to deal with everything, and to make sure that these policies from transport to building and construction, can really apply these kind of principles and making sure that you don't only reach environmental objective, of course, but you stay in what is the circular economy is an economic growth agenda. And at the same time, what you want to achieve is innovation, job creation, reduction of inequalities and access to services. So as you can see, this is a very complex matter. And what we try to do is to put together the stakeholders, exactly like you, experts in several sectors that have a role to play in urban policies and have an understanding on how it works and what can be done for the future. What we have seen, for example, working in Sweden, in the Netherlands, in Spain, with specific case studies, but also with more than 50 cities all around the world, is that indeed the building and construction sector is a key sector in cities. More than 70% of 50 cities that we have surveyed signaled the building and construction sector as a key one. And so the problem is what to do to make it circular. And of course,
Use wood.
It could be, but what we have seen looking at these, let's say, the development on urban policies is perhaps two things that I would like to share, and then we can discuss further. The first one is a systemic and holistic approach. Is not just the construction material, which of course is important, but it's key to look at the upstream and the downstream phases of the building and construction sector in general. So the planning, the designing, the operation, and of course at the end of life to repurposing. And this is something that many cities are taking into account.
For the two aspects, you have the two key people sitting just next to you.
Well, so we can definitely discuss. And the second thing is that 80% of cities that we have interviewed, they start circular economy initiatives as a sort of pilot and experiment. Sometimes it can be a building, sometimes it can be something applied to a neighbors. Like for example, even modular building, we have several examples in the Netherlands from Amsterdam to Rotterdam. But what is important is that once you start up and then you define what can be done in the future, then it's key to find the enabling condition to scale them up. Because otherwise, they stay like a very good solution on a small scale and they are not able to reach the expected impact. So I'll just leave it here and then we can discuss further.
You have done a perfect introduction. I would like to leave it to the two gentlemen directly to reply because you have experience with that. Yves, what would you like to say? Because what she has stressed upon, you have some experience with this planning phase and also to see how the circular economy concept plays a role in that.
Yeah, thank you for this invitation, and I'm very glad to be here. Also, my greetings to Finland. I went there as a young architect studying Finnish in architecture. So at that time, wood was not that central, which is now actually. So I really like the fact that you organize this now because it's not, trying to speak about, it's really a necessity. And I think this is something which you all share today. And this is a moment where we can create and link this to climate crisis as you do. So really congratulations for that. To answer the question, I really would like to see wood applications much more competitive when we work on constructions, meaning that we would like not only to look at the construction cost itself of the building, but to speak really about circular, we should also speak about the grey energy which is used to produce the construction materials, which comes before, and also the carbon footprint once we dismantling the projects. I mean, we have 70% of the built environment in Europe to be renovated, and it's very expensive also to sort out all those materials which have been put into place. And even new buildings we are going to plan now should be easily dismantled and should be judged on their footprint once they stop their living, let's say. Then that would help a lot because all public markets only go on the building price itself as the architect or the surveyor is going to calculate. But I do believe that we would have a much larger impact and also a little bit more time, because when you want to beat concrete industry, they have, in 24 hours concrete wherever they want. But I think we should really look also about the grey cost, about cement, and about those aspects. And that would help us a lot to negotiate and to have a better position in public bidding, which we have to see. So this is really an essential mark for circular economy, where we would like. So this is also what we like to develop at Bois, the Laboratory for Timber Construction, EPFL in Lausanne, is that we use no more steel connectors, so you can just, dismantle it very easily. And there's no difference between city territory or rural territory. I mean, of course, you look at different parts, but the legislation in terms of building permit is now very well evolved, that you can build 5 stories much more easily directly. I mean, before, like 10 years ago, you had to convince local authorities to get your permit for that. There are some restrictions still, but you can, it's now more in use, let's say, so that's very positive.
Yeah. Maybe you can add to this, Ernest.
Thank you. Well, what you said before is probably a global view, what you just mentioned. And the timber industry, or the success of timber construction in Europe, that could be a role model probably for Europe. But the basis for that was that we all have the same species, we all have the same building codes, more or less. So the resource of timber that could be sourced locally, which is probably not the case in other areas of the world. So that's why it's probably not possible to take our success story and copy-paste it to another region of the world. And that probably makes a big difference in my eyes, because our leading species in Europe, all over Europe North as well as South, was based on spruce, fir, probably a little bit pine and so on. So everyone could work with that, and that was a resource that was accessible for everyone, for the whole industry in Southern Europe as well as in Northern Europe. And everyone could build with the same material. A Southern engineer could develop projects in north of Europe without any problem, because he knew the products, he knew the species, and he could work with that. And that's completely different in probably South America, Africa, where you do not have access to a kind of leading species.
Thank you. Maybe if we can go to Italy, to Silvia now, and would you be willing to share with us how the woodworking industries that are actually feeding the construction sector are ready around Europe for the circularity?
Absolutely, but please allow me to make it just a very background information, connecting to what Oriana please said. It was 2015 when the Commission launched for the very first time the Circular Economy Action Plan. And what was the purpose? The purpose was to reduce pressure on the use of natural resources and to set up an economic growth that could be beneficial also for the environment. 5 years after, when the Commission relaunched the Circular Economy Action Plan, so let's say a second edition, Timmermans, the Commissioner, promoted the new initiative of the Commission, clearly stating that the wood industry had a great opportunity in the circular economy because they could help to decarbonize the building sector and to improve circularity. This message was given again yesterday when the Fit for 55 package was launched. And again, the Commission stressed the role of the forest-based industry for a green economy and for a green and inclusive circular economy. Circular economy is everywhere, is also in the taxonomy file. And why I mention this? Because one of the 6 objectives in order to prove also in the building site that you are complying with the environmental criteria of the Commission is indeed the circularity. So again, there is no doubt that the forest-based products are well positioned to play a key role in the circular economy by providing a renewable source of raw material and fostering low carbon economy. It goes without saying that when you use wood in construction or any natural building material, you can use it, reuse it, recycle. At the end of their life cycle, you can burn it and produce bioenergy. So all this is instrumental to the circular economy. Circular economy per se is not a criteria to say it's sustainable if you do not start from a sustainable material. And this sustainable material, it is wood. So these are the very first consideration of the wood industry. We consider that we have a key role to play in the development of the circular economy. I would like to recall that the Commission has already announced in the second package for the circular economy that they want to work to a revision of the construction product regulation in order to better include all the aspects related to the circular economy, and certainly the woodworking industry will be active on this dossier together also with the colleague of the panel industry in order really to promote criteria that are positive for our sector.
Thank you very much. I think it's very important to again emphasize the Fit for 55 because this is really our opportunity, I would say. But as earlier already mentioned, that there are two roles of wood as a material, and one is the substitution. And I would be challenging our colleagues here from which aspects do you think are the most challenging in order to be actually using wood as a substitute in the construction or in the cities as such? If we started the discussion today in the urban awareness, I think that's for you for sure the first one.
Well, first in my eyes, it's having the right product in the right building. And we have different kind of climatic conditions all over Europe. I mean, it makes a difference if you're building a building in Nice or in central Switzerland or in Germany or up north. That certainly has an impact on building physics and statics and so on. In addition, and that requires that you have the right product in the building, of course. And then another thing is again logistics. I mean, does it really make sense to ship products around the world just to use them in a certain building in Switzerland, for example? I mean, that is a big question mark, and vice versa, of course, without blaming any colleagues doing that. Anyway, I mean, that is a big issue, having the right product and also having the know-how to build locally with the given climatic conditions. So taking care of building physics, acoustics, and so on. As I said before, it is a difference in countries. Altitude matters as well as humidity. So good education for people building it.
If you want to add from your perspective.
Yes, well, we see also now the emergence of considering row-sawn timber, like round timber. We have an industry of very specific, sophisticated timber-derived products, but we can also see now the necessity perhaps to increase the biomass by using natural autonomy of timber and link them directly to the architectural form, meaning that we can link this ancestral material, construction material, to digitalization, and the construction sector in timber is one of the most advanced sector in terms of digitalization. I mean, they very early on worked on BIM models and logistics to produce those timber derived and to apply them. And I really love the fact that now we can even extend this on other levels. So this is something I see very clearly in the future to be used for.
Oriana, please.
Thanks. In my view, and accordingly to what we found out in our studies, which is of course not strictly related to wood and timber, but I think it can be definitely applied. There are two types of challenges. One is the magnitude of challenges. So if we talk about the magnitude, for example, and we take into account cities, we know already that by 2050 there will be 9 billion people, and 55% of these people will be living in cities. And this will mean an increased demand in infrastructure. That's why circular economy strategies already nowadays in several cities, from Amsterdam to London to Paris, to Maribor in Slovenia, they all take into account the building and construction sector, because it is a challenge for the future. And all these kind of solutions, from designing, planning, and operating water energy efficiently, for example, in building, they have to be taken into account now. We also know that resource and material management is basically responsible of half of the global greenhouse gases emission. And from what I know, from data from Green Building Council, is the building sector is responsible overall of around 40% of greenhouse gases emissions. So there is a challenge, a magnitude of challenge that may be solved through also choices of different material. Now, the problem, as Ernest was saying, it depends how, of course, and in which cases and where this can be applied. The second challenge is the type of challenge. Here I'm learning, and we know that technical solutions are available. You perfectly know how to deal with recycling or reducing energy, as Yves was saying, and how to dismantle or to design a modular building. So it's not about the technicality. The problem is the governance conditions. So the regulations that should be, of course, conducive, it should be smart, it should be flexible, it should be adapted to different contexts. The problem is the financing and also the risks that constructors and actors operating in this sector, as well as, of course, governments, are taken into account. There are, for example, issues in relation to cultural barrier. Are we ready to see buildings in a different way? Do we trust? So this is also an issue that is often taken into account. So if we consider all the governance conditions to promote, to facilitate, and to make sure that these kind of solutions can be taken into account, for example, life cycle analysis, labeling, monitoring, evaluation, reporting, transparency. So making sure that there are the conditions for which this technical solution can be put in place, then we will be able to solve the challenges we are discussing.
Thank you very much. I think in Europe, 85% already of the population live in urban environments, such as the urban conditions. Anna, Finland, what is your comment, or what would you like to ask in addition?
Yes, thank you, Andreas. I would like to come a little bit back to this sustainability and sustainable growth and circular economy, of course, one of the main tools in it. If we think about the sustainable growth, actually we need 3 different angles there. We need the sustainable economy, we need environmental and ecological sustainability, and also social and cultural sustainability. And all of these 3 angles should be in balance, because without sustainable economy, you probably don't have this social sustainability and so forth. My question is that this means that if we really want to reach this sustainability also in the growth according to European Green Deal and Circular Economy Action Plan, we have to change from the linear growth, linear economy to circular economy. And that also means that the business models and how the companies are acting has to be different. What is it now? And so my question for you, especially for you, Sylvia, and also I think that even ask and can easily answer to this. How do you think that this woodworking, wood construction sector should change the business models in order to, well, be able to foster the sustainable growth?
Regarding the business model, I think that Ernest probably is the best person to answer, because he works in companies while I simply work in Brussels. But what I can report is what Andreas has mentioned at the very beginning. The sawmill industry is the backbone of this circular bioeconomy. The sawmill industry in particular, and why I mentioned the sawmill industry, because we are the first in the value chain, so we are the first that started this utilization of logs. We already operate according to the highest
After
resource
forest.
efficient.
We start with the forest, Sylvia. Sorry.
We already operate with the highest resource efficiency. Nothing is waste in a sawmill plant. There is utilization for every single residues or byproduct that has been produced. So nothing in the log goes wasted. We had days ago our general assembly, and one important element was mentioned. It was the cost of logs per cubic meters. We are talking about roughly around Europe, 150 euro per cubic meter. So you can imagine how important it is for the sawmill to maximize the utilization of logs. Overall, as an entire value chain, we have a very important story to say, and it's a real story. We have a double circular factor. The first circular factor is in use. So you can use several times our product. You can use our residues, and nothing can be wasted. From our residues of the sawmill plants, you can create a fantastic product like the wood-based panel product, and then contribute also to the carbonized furniture sector, for example. But at the same time, we have another circularity, and it's the carbon circularity. And this is only the wood industry who has this factor, because through the life cycle of our product and of a forest, you can really guarantee this carbon circle. So this is our key story that we have to promote, this double circularity. Personally, I do not think that when it comes to company, you have to change their business model. What we have certainly to investigate more is how to better use also the hardwood resources that are out in the forest. We know that the forests are changing. We know that we will have more hardwood species. We need to invest in order to use more the hardwood species. We need to create standards in order to use more these hardwood species. But we also need to give some financial support to companies to do this investment, and also to the research, because without the research, we won't have a new innovative product. So these are my recommendations. Thank you.
Thank you so much. Who wants to jump on? Ernest, I see you're moving.
Sylvia made a point. I believe also we have the resources, we have the engineering capacity, we have the industry, and we have researchers and so on. But to be able to really make that a success story, I believe it takes a new design. At the end of the day, it's the design of the products and of the building. Having products that are being recycled means also they need to be signed to being recycled. So no hybrid products can be used in theory at least. Concrete timber platforms, for example, perfect products for engineering, for good products, for good constructions, but to recycle them, that is difficult. And the same thing is for different kind of hybrid products, timber plastic, wood composites, and so on. It really makes this a question if it really makes sense to develop these kind of products, or to try to develop different kind of products without marrying two different products that cannot be recycled together.
Thank you. Oriana, would you like? Yeah, thank you.
Sure. Perhaps two observations. The first is that, as Anne-Christine asked, an important question about sustainability and taking into account the three aspects, economic, environmental, and social ones. And indeed, this is key because the circular economy is a means to an end, is not an end per se. So we're not talking about circular economy just to perceive this kind of economy, but because we want to reach those kind of goals. And these techniques that we are discussing now can definitely help. But in regarding to the business models, I would like perhaps to highlight the fact that I've heard from the discussion today that it is key to, and also from the studies, of course, that we published a few months ago on the circular economy in cities and regions, that perhaps the two kind of business models in the building and construction sectors needs to be taken absolutely into account for the future. One is to apply eco-design to make sure that things can last longer, but also materials have reduced impact in terms of atmospheric emission, but also in, using the material itself, so made more from recyclable, for example. And the second is the repurposing. We need to think about the flexibility of how we are using buildings today. And the COVID situation was a great example on the fact that shifting the way we live, we work, we consume, and we travel made us also questioning ourselves on the use of buildings as it was a year ago. So this flexibility in terms of repurposing and making sure that buildings can actually use for different purposes, I guess for the future will have a really important role to play.
Thank you. I think this is food for thoughts for a creative architect to jump on as well. Yves, what's your opinion?
Yeah, but still, thank you about business model. I just would like to mention that I think we could also become a little bit more local. As in the food industry it happens, and we have municipalities who have their own forests. They have to manage in a biodiverse way those forests. We can indicate very specific trees for very specific applications, and I really like the fact that that's possible. Even so, we are trying now with a small municipality in the mountains to revive sawmills, which are still there, and where we just with very small business make, let's say, a technological lifting there in order to use this kind of, let's say, even hardwood tree for specific building there. So I think that this is a different local kind of business model that can be used. That's something which we are open, which is not completely in line what we discuss in general when we speak about market and timber-derived products, but it's very short as a way to do, and it's very clean as well. It's very sustainable to do that.
But Yves, if you work on this concept, Ariana, what you said, like the circular economy of functions, when we do not only think to deliver a product that will be bought and owned by a consumer, but where you will pay for a certain service over a period of time. Is this something that has arrived, for example, in architecture already, to really think that long and to say this building will serve 20 years as a university building and then it can be reused or reconstructed or be flexible? Are you already there?
Yes, of course. So we made the parliament building, so the request was 100 years. So we did a wooden structure for 100 years. We did a theater building with another type of budget. So it was 25 years, but the cladding of the facade is just 15 years. We did a chapel for 2 years only, but now it's still there. But the cladding has to be replaced after, let's say, 15 years. So you can actually negotiate with the landlord to do this. I also see a great chance in not only selling a building or a roof, but to sell a roof with this maintenance contract, meaning that when you look at trough roofs or even shingle roofs so the problem is always the maintenance. So when you get a robot to position your shingles exactly the way you do, and if you deliver to your client not only the roof, but also the robot who might maintain your roof, like when you sell a machine, we could go into something very different in terms of service and use. So not only the architectural program which is for the buildings where architects have to offer much more flexible buildings and much more transformable spaces for different needs, I believe also that this, you know, the classic contract where you just deliver your building and then the maintenance goes, it could be challenged by different vernacular technical approaches which are lost for now, but which could survive or resurface, let's say.
I think we have many ideas, but regulations needs to be also somehow changed that this is enabled. And on the other hand, society needs to accept that they will have a building only for 15 years or 30 years and so on. But one question I have, and maybe since you have a microphone already, is like with the wooden construction, we do have a lot of also fossil-based materials that we integrate in the building. And what about your opinion on the circularity of the materials that we are incorporating into a wooden construction or in our homes or buildings in general? Are we, do we know it well enough, or do we consider it when we talk about also circularity of the wooden buildings, for example?
Yeah, this is a very important question because timber construction is very often multi-layered construction, and we have a project we call wood and air. We just want to do it with wood and air, and I think it's possible to avoid metal connectors and also other types of insulation, and we should go into that direction. Also for easy dismantling, there's positive aspects. We had a project with Ernest Schillinger about wood welding, where CLT panels would actually not more glued, so we take out the glue, we just would weld it by friction. So it's this spirit, I think, we should take further in order to simplify some too sophisticated timber-derived products, or even, let's say, the construction industry. You have some window details which are so complicated that nobody knows exactly no more why they have to be like that. And there's a new stream to go to some more sane simplification of construction, and that would also have what you are talking about, meaning to take out those other effects. But we can transform timber. This is our project. Perhaps, Ernest, you would like to mention the cladding project. I think it's also very interesting to transform timber, but naturally, just to increase its mineral aspects, but naturally, and then it is more water resistant. We have also a project which is with 3D printing, sorry. So there are lots of possibilities to replace and not to have this kind of situation no more.
Thank you. So maybe we can continue and going back to the start with the urban environment, where many cities around Europe are of a cultural heritage, some even protected by UNESCO. And I wonder, where do you see the role of wood and timber buildings in these city centers? Of course, when we talk about circularity, we of course are also talking about the decarbonization of the building stock, but the cultural heritage city centers is something that we need to find a way how we can actually support, in my view, with a renewable material as wood is. Maybe, Ernest, maybe you can start and then pass further. Yeah.
Well, traditionally, timber always played a big role, also in the early days. So even in very old buildings, there's always some timber that are being used. And even just replacing these pieces, that might have already a big impact with kind of modern touch, for instance, modern surfaces that might be a game changer in regards of renovation. In addition to that, in architects, but that's probably Yves who wants to answer that, good combination of old building material together with modern style of wood that is well regarded and finds also public everywhere. I mean, look here.
Yeah, and look at the program following the next days. You have fantastic examples. Yves will also present something in the program of the forum.
Yeah.
Yes, timber can be used without being visible. You know, when you have this structure which is out of timber, it can still be there, and we have a lot of material which is there. So that's one thing. The other thing is that Surelevation is something which, for example, for the city of Geneva, you have a whole layer of you could add to the city without changing actually any foundation calculation, which is a huge real estate impact on that city. And it's very easily, let's say, to be built out of modular timber construction. So there's a natural indication to do this with more light structure, 1/5, if you would do it with other materials. So there are very good, let's say, and promising situation. But even on the countryside, like in the Flemish part of Belgium, they just decided to protect the whole landscape, and to densify certain centers, they have to build there. So it's very interesting to use timber in those areas, even it's mostly brick, which has been used traditionally. So I don't see so much. Perhaps just to stop with this is that when we built the Vidi Theater in Lausanne, it was only timber, but it has to be accepted by the service of protection of the apartment, because Max Bill built a building next to it, and it was just the philosophy to use modular structures, which was actually related to the philosophy of Max Bill, who allowed us to get a permit for wooden buildings. So it didn't went to the timber itself, it went to another, let's say, logic.
In any case, just to add that business as usual in the building sector cannot be applied in the future. In Amsterdam, for example, only applying circular economy principle to cement and aluminium would cut the greenhouse emission by 2030 by half. And there are many already instruments that are used by several cities and places. For example, the Public Waste Agency of Flanders use an instrument called Totem, and to highlight and evaluate the environmental impacts of material. Of course, I mean, the most polluted one will be definitely reduced or totally eliminated by the future constructions. The city of Paris has introduced several circular economy criteria based on, for example, recycled materials and information on the environmental impact of those. And for the future construction, there are a number of labels and certificates that, of course, have to take into account in terms of circular economy criteria. And also there is an important role of digitalization as well. There is an increasing use of material passports to have an understanding on how this material can be used and what are the impacts. So there is even if we talk about city centers, which of course require to respect some aesthetics in a more precise way than new construction, there is indeed room for improvement and for definitely avoiding to continue building as using the business as usual that has been used so far, which actually follow the linear principles.
And Amsterdam is standing purely on wood in the ground. There's close to Venice, the two cities that are really standing on forest in the water, and this is why it's so beautiful and still there. And Christine, unfortunately we are getting closing to the end, but I would like to keep the floor to you.
So thanks, Andreas, and thanks all the panelists. I think that this has been an excellent discussion, and you have given a lot of very, very good insights and food for thought for us. Maybe at the end of this panel session, I would like to still ask one question from you, and the question is, it's more maybe to those who are dealing with the sector, but anyhow, I think that all of you have a very good insights of the question. We have very nice initiatives going on in Europe at the moment. We have this new Bauhaus initiative, we have a renovation wave, but it seems that the wood sector is not so much present in those initiatives that it could be. So what could they do, or what could we do better to also to increase the voice of the wood sector in these initiatives?
Everybody's smiling. Sylvia, shall we ask you first? I think it's in the heart of your business and you are the voice. Tell us.
Yes, very quick comment. We are actually present in both in the Bauhaus and also in the renovation wave. Regarding the renovation wave, we have to clarify that from a legislative point of view, the focus of the Commission was how to decarbonize the building sector, really starting analyzing the energy used by the building itself. But everybody is waiting for the new forest strategy and is expected for tomorrow. And even in that document, the Commission has highlighted the key role of the wood product in the Bauhaus, but also in the renovation wave. They have the Commission, according to the leaked version, has also emphasized that there are misconceptions about using timber, particularly related to fire resistance, for example. But this is not all. In Paris with you, you have a very dear colleague of mine, is Chris Wenendal, and together with EPF, the woodworking industry has launched the Wood for Bauhaus Alliance. And with this initiative, what we aim to do is really to present to the Commission a list of recommendation, but also research requests in order really to promote more and more the use of wood in construction. In the framework of this alliance, also a dedicated conference have been organized in order really to showcase what you can do with wood. And this is what we will continue to do, really interacting with the Commission and promoting the fantastic use of timber in construction.
Grazie mille, Italy. Can we have very short statements for you, all three, please? Oriana, please start.
I think it is important, of course, to improve the information on what can be done. This can be done through successful case studies or successful stories. There is no such a solution that can be applied everywhere in exactly the same way, but everything can be inspirational. What we tell the cities to do is to lead by example, to be role models, and if they can show success stories, then this can be also used for other cities to learn. This is the first, and probably the second is that we need definitely to improve on showing the impacts. This is not always easy to do. At the UCD we have putting very much attention on data when it comes to the circular economy, and we have done an inventory of more than 500 indicators only in relation to circular economy strategy. So it is challenging, but showing the impact, economic, social, and environmental ones, is one of the ways to show that actually solutions can work and can be scaled up.
Yes, I mean, the Bauhaus idea was an idea of synergia and also an holistic approach combining artists, architects, engineers, and Walter Gropius designed social housing made out of timber. I think the Wood for Bauhaus initiative could be a holistic way, trying to find synergies between the industry and governance in that manner. And I believe that a lot of clients actually are asking for change, and that changed also the construction industry and the main players there. So it's very interesting to see that.
At the very beginning of the circle, there's a forest, and we have forests, but we also need to make sure that we can harvest it also in the future, and that's probably one thing that politics is being asked. Not only to protect forests, but also to give it to the industry, to give it to the people to be used, to be able to harvest it in the future.
Thank you all very much. Let's give a warming hand and special thanks to our panelists and also to Sylvia and Anna on the screen. Bravo. That was very inspirational. Thanks also for giving the word. I leave it to Andrea to introduce to the next one. And you said the changes asked for, and now, Andrea, the next panel is called?
the change toward circular bioeconomy. And Giovanni needs to come up here to lead us into the next session, and also the other panelists. Do you want to, Giovanni, do you want to be calling them up? Separate, yeah. So,
Yeah, you can
yeah.
call them.
Yeah. Do you want?
No, it's not necessary. Please. Tina is with me. Okay, Tina is the other moderator. Okay. Okay. Okay, thank you very much. Good afternoon, everybody. My name is Giovanni Tosi. I'm one of the acrobat of the project WoodCircus. The topic of this roundtable is change. So we are going to discuss about the new circular approach towards bioeconomy. And for this reason, we have called several panelists. Two of them are with us. Other two are connected by Teams. Before introducing them, I would like also to introduce myself, because I'm beyond to be a WoodCircus acrobat, a WoodCircus project partner. I'm the responsible of the innovation area in COSMOB. COSMOB is a technological center for the wood furniture sector located in Pesaro, in Marche region in Italy, by the Adriatic Sea. We are mainly a technological laboratory for testing, so we test raw materials, semi-finished and finished products, mainly belonging to the furniture sector. We are also a training center, and we also support companies in their research and development activities, because we can rely on an internal fab lab. So we support companies in their digital prototype team, typing, designing, and advanced manufacturing processes. I'm not the only moderator of this roundtable. Together with me, we have Tina Paiula from VTT. Tina, if you are online, please introduce yourself as well.
Hello. Hello, good afternoon, everyone. My name is Tina Paiula, and as Giovanni said, I come from Finland, from VTT. I work there as the principal scientist in the area of sustainable business. And I have more than 20 years of experience in sustainable assessment and of products and business models, and also the methodology development of assessing sustainability. And here at WoodCircus, I'm leading a work package that evaluates the sustainability of best practices.
Okay, thank you, Tina. So now I'm going to introduce the panelists. The first one is Florence de Mengin-Fondragon. Florence is an agricultural engineer. She represents Valdelia. Valdelia is the French furniture professional organization of players in the furniture manufacturing. Valdelia contributes in defining, seeking new ways of collecting and processing furniture waste, as well as dealing with the eco-design. The second panelist is connected by Teams as well. He is Dimitri Dupuis. Dimitri has experience in furniture industries in Sweden and in France as well. He represents now the green furniture concept, and he contributes in the transition process towards a circular business model. Here with us, we have other two panelists. We have Jean-Claude Escrivá. Jean-Claude Escrivá has more than 35 years experience in different fields. He has collaborated with startups and industry groups in different fields, such as information technologies, telecommunication, aeronautics, so different contexts, different frameworks. Now he represents Sofrinov in order to promote the recycling of wood sector, also in partnership with actors of the social and solidarity economy. We have also with us Chris Weindale. Sorry for my bad pronunciation, I hope it is okay. Chris is the representative of the European Panel Federation. the European Panel Federation represents as well the wood-based panel producer in Europe, and Chris deal mainly with the regulation, with the standardization body in order to define the best properties of wood-based panels under the technical and economical point of view. So we can begin the discussion. Tina, if it is okay for you, I would like to make a first general question for our panelists. The first general question is about change, and why, my question is why and how are you approaching this change towards circular bioeconomy? And with more precision, I would like also to address then this question mainly to Florence and to Dimitri, because they are dealing with the furniture sector. And considering my experience, I would like to make a further question to them after the general question for all the panelists, for sure. Because in the general market, in the general context and the market as well, we are noticed that there are some big players that are implementing a new business model, for instance, based on furniture renting or taking back furniture or reuse. And my second question for Florence and Dimitri is if, for instance, small companies, small entities are ready for this change, also not in competition, but considering this general scenario of big players implementing these new circular approaches. So I would begin with my general question. So the floor is yours. Who wants to begin? Florence?
Oui, je vais peut-être commencer parce qu'effectivement, Valdelia a été créé suite à la responsabilité élargie du producteur, donc le Grenelle 2 qui en France s'est élargi sur le mobilier, et nous avons eu donc un agrément des pouvoirs publics pour modifier aussi tous ces schémas qui étaient déjà en place et imposer aussi aux producteurs, c'est-à-dire aux fabricants de meubles, de prendre en compte en fait la fin de vie des produits. Donc nous, on est vraiment une filière donc opérationnelle, mais qui est financée par les producteurs dans le but de les impliquer en fait dans tous ces schémas de seconde vie des produits. Et c'est important de remettre ça aussi dans ce contexte-là. Et les pouvoirs publics poussent beaucoup sur le réemploi, la réutilisation. On voit arriver la loi AGEC qui justement impose aussi ce réemploi, cette réutilisation pour à la fois les fabricants et pour aussi les utilisateurs et les consommateurs. Donc on a aussi cette impulsion réglementaire en France qui permet d'imposer, mais aussi d'ouvrir les esprits sur le réemploi, la réutilisation des matériaux et notamment du bois. C'est vrai qu'il y a de plus en plus aussi de demandes de consommateurs, et Valdelia donc a été créé déjà en 2012, et on est vraiment, on s'implique sur le réemploi, la réutilisation des matériaux depuis cette époque-là, et on a vu le changement de mentalité, on a vu toutes les parties prenantes en fait prendre en compte ce réemploi, cette réutilisation et ce changement de modèle économique, et on accompagne vraiment que ce soit nos adhérents, que ce soit les structures de l'économie sociale et solidaire, que ce soit les acheteurs publics ou que ce soit les acheteurs de façon large, sur ce changement entre une économie très linéaire où à la limite la fin de vie on verra plus tard, à une économie beaucoup plus circulaire où on réemploie les matériaux, où on réemploie les produits. Et c'est important de remettre aussi dans le contexte réglementaire français qui nous permet aussi de faire avancer les choses, même si il y a de temps en temps où la loi nous dit il faut le faire, mais il y a toujours des barrières effectivement des consommateurs.
Okay, thank you very much. And Dimitri.
Hi everyone.
Hi.
Yeah, can you hear me?
Yes.
Well, yeah. Thanks for the opportunity. First, it's an honor to attend this white paper launch. Florence just mentioned what's happening at, I would say, at the systemic level, and there's a lot of good news. A lot has been done as far as infrastructures, as far as technology, of course, that really helps moving towards a more circular economy. As for myself, I'm really looking at self at the more humble level of a small company and what we can do, and to address the question why we should do it. I think that what's going on these days with this shortage of materials, so not just wood, but pretty much every material these days, shows how it's important to really implement that definition of the circular economy, which is to decouple the growth, the economic growth, from the use of resources. So at the small company level, why do we need to do it? Because, well, we can't get supplies. Even at Green Furniture, actually, we can experience it. So it's very important to understand that why. The why is because if we keep control, and we can go in more details throughout the discussion, but if we keep control over those resources, if we keep control over our products, if the ownership through those different models, circular business models, stay within the hands of the company, then we can control what will come back. We can control the costs of those supplies rather than wait upstream to see where it's coming from and at what price, because there's a very high price volatility. So we, at Green Furniture, again, at our small company level, that started a few years ago, we've been gaining some momentum because things have been done in a very sustainable way, but that was sustainability in a linear way. So how to make the furniture as clean as possible. It's been described earlier, the woodworking industry, so construction, and I'm not a technician, I'm not even from the construction industry, but that probably applies to the furniture as well, has improved a lot, has become highly efficient. We can see that some of the circular business model already clearly in place. The wood, in its essence, is a circular supply. It is renewable, but there is a shortage because it takes time to grow wood. The industry has become really good as well in terms of resource recovery. There's almost no waste. So the first principle of the circular economy is well in place, which is to design out waste and pollution. So I would say what's really important, and again at my level, but I really understand that, and this model is blossoming, we can see it, big, small companies. It's how we apply that second principle. How do we keep products and materials in use? So it's been mentioned earlier by Andreas, and I believe some other speakers, how do we make the performance economy, the function economy work in the end? So I believe that's the core of the challenge for a lot of small companies. Try to switch from selling a product, pure and simple, this hit and run sell, and try to set up the model through which we keep, as a company, as a manufacturer, the ownership of the product and just sell its use. And there are a variety of tools and services for that. So, yeah.
Thank you. And I think in this framework, in this sustainability framework, a significant role is played also by the panel producer. And what do you think, Chris, what do you think about the improving elements in order to further increase the eco-sustainability, the circularity of the system?
Thank you. Can you hear me? Thank you very much and for inviting me and for the opportunity to address this. Circularity and sustainability is really at the heart of the panel industry. When you cut the tree to make planks, then you can use roughly half of the wood. So what do you do with the other half? And that's where our industry is coming in, taking all those offcuts, shavings, small diameter round wood from the forest thinnings, and basically gluing small pieces of wood together in order to make fantastic quality, large sheet materials, and thus extending the use of the wood and optimizing the use tremendously. Over the years, our industry has also developed recycling. Primarily starting from wood shortage of raw material, but also increasingly from a societal point of view, that there was not really a possibility to do recycling at a large industrial scale, and that's what the particle board industry has developed, starting in few countries like Italy, Spain, Belgium, but gradually increasing all over Europe. And the key success factor of developing this recycling is basically collection schemes. And those collection schemes can either be voluntary, like in Italy, you have an excellent example of a pool of packaging waste materials that is then brought also even from the remote sides of the country to the industrial sites. And on the other hand, you also have companies who are by themselves putting containers at their large customers in order for them to free of charge all their production waste to put it in the container, and then the manufacturer brings it to the product. And there's also, of course, on the other side, the country where I live, Belgium, is one of the champion countries in recycling, especially in municipal waste recycling. So there is a very successful concept of municipalities having waste recycling parks where the waste should be then, of course, separated. The key for the panel industry to be using the material successfully is first and foremost that it is kept separate and it is not contaminated, because if it's contaminated, then automatically part can't be used anymore, or it becomes much more complicated. And then the third one is volume. We need to get the volume, because the particle board manufacturers are large companies, so they need large volumes and to work with. For circularity, what have we done in our industry? We have developed standards. On the performance of the product, we have said it shouldn't matter whether you use recycled wood or virgin timber. The performance, the mechanical characteristics, fire properties, emissions and so on, they should be exactly the same when you use recycled material than virgin material. But we have also set a standard as to what are the maximum chemical contaminations that you could have, and these were derived from the European standard on the safety of toys, which has meanwhile been recognized by the European Commission in the EU Eco-label, for instance. What's the future? Well, the future certainly in our industry is that also increasingly particle MDF manufacturers and even OSB manufacturers are looking into how could they use more recycled wood in the processes. And those of you knowing OSB would say, but how can this be possible? You cannot get the layers. Well, they could do the same trick as in the particle board, that you have the flakes on the outer parts where you need them, but you have the central layer where, of course, you could try to put in other materials. So these developments are further ongoing, and from that perspective, our industry is really proud to be part of the circular bioeconomy. But as I said, we need the wood, and there is one big cloud on the horizon in countries like Germany, where the bioenergy sector is putting big pressure on the government and to get subsidies for them specifically for burning waste wood from construction and demolition waste and other fractions. And obviously there is, on the one hand, we are super happy with the Fit for 5 package that is asking for more usage of wood, more harvested wood products, more value chain improvement. But on the other hand, when then you look at the RED 2, RED 3, they are saying there are some assortments like logs you should not subsidize. That's fantastic. But of course the big risk is that if then they're going to massively subsidize the burning of the waste wood, that we will have a big problem. So that I think will be a big challenge in going further. And one last point, there are very novel ways of thinking I identified in the building sector. There is a big bank, Triodos Bank, with their headquarters in the Netherlands, who have basically built their new head office using a lot of wood. And their concept is completely different from the current concept. Their concept is the building is a database of materials. It's a warehouse. And at the end of the life of the building, they want to, all the building pieces have been identified and catalogued, so that at the end of the life cycle, you're not paying a lot of cost to demolish the building. No, you can basically sell off the different parts of the building. And that looks to be a novel concept. I personally don't really understand how then exactly they come to this link with using a lot of wood, but I think it's a great example.
Thank you, Chris. Just one comment, because one of the first output of the project, the first positive result, is that in some cases we noticed that the particle boards, the wood-based panels, in some cases are realized with 100% of recycled material. So this is one of the most positive aspects in this field. And we noticed them also that on the basis of for the certification, for obtaining certification, the quality of wood panels is one of the primary aspects in order to obtain these labels, this certification for furniture, but also for other typology of products. So thank you, Chris. I have another question for Jean-Claude, a general question, because reading your profile, reading your experiences, we can consider you as an expert in terms of innovation in different fields. For the wood sector in general, not only for furniture construction, which are, in your opinion, the most relevant innovation that we can implement, not only in the short period, but also in the mid-long period, to increase the circularity of the system?
First of all, when we start our studies, we'll look at a particular wood market, which is the pallet market. In pallet market, circularity is inside the spirit. So what they do, they produce and they repair, and when the wood is ended, it comes biomass or energy. And when we look at this circular economy, we really think the pallet is a good thing. So we try to see it in another way, and we just have to consider to develop our product. The pallet is just a cinder block, a wood cinder block, and if it's a cinder block, we just have to create cement to associate the cement block and to build walls. So in the circular economy, we offer another way for the pallet life, and then you can have a new construction, wood construction, but in fact, what is important for us is to simplify. We have a lot of regulation, we have a lot of law, and everything is really complicated to do something new. And when you do innovation, take it by the simplest way. It's not really easy to, but you can democratize, and this is the way we are looking to work, democratize the use of wood by simplification. I'm not quite sure that I got the right answer to your question, but I just
clear.
want to put this point. Innovation for wood, there's a lot of way and there's a lot of innovation, but we have always in the same problem that innovation costs a lot.
Yes.
And we have to find people who are ready to invest in the innovation. And at this time, it's easier for big companies to put money on cemetery than wood construction.
Okay, thank you very much. Tina, have you got, I think you have some question for our panelists.
Yes, thank you, Giovanni.
You're welcome.
I have a question regarding future perspective of growth. So, as we all know, there is a growing demand for renewable raw materials from the forest, and I mean to provide alternatives to fossil-based products and energy. But at the same time, there is increasing need to maintain forests as a carbon sink and to ensure the biodiversity, which is a hot topic today.
So how do you see the forest-based sector should address these twofold goals? This is a general question for whoever wants to start.
Florence, maybe at the systemic level, no?
Okay.
Well, a simple answer from, again, the humble small company guy, not to promote the company I work for, but they started this a while ago. The third principle, I go back to circular economy principles, it's the regeneration of natural system. At Green Furniture, very early, they took charge, they took responsibility with this, saying, okay, for every bench we make, we're going to plant a tree. It's that simple. I'm not saying it's a solution, a full solution to the problem, because again, and I'm thinking about the construction business with cycles that are maybe more similar to the natural cycle of a tree. It takes 30 years at least, ideally more, for a tree to mature. Not an expert, please tell me if I'm wrong, but how do we close the gap? That's what I described earlier. Try to use, reuse, refurbish products as much as possible, have several cycles with the same wood that has been chopped already. But in the meantime, what we can do as a small contribution is plant trees. And I believe that whether we are a small company or a big construction company, so small furniture or big construction company, maybe we can, and maybe things are going in the right direction when it comes to accounting standards, but we should be able to really try to get to that neutral point where for every tree we remove, we plant a new one. That's easy said, I'm aware, as an idea, but yeah, regenerating system should be taken into account as early as possible in the process. Simple answer, maybe not a good one.
Thank you.
Okay, please.
Yes, thank Giovanni. Yes, I think that's certainly the very first thing that needs to be done, plant more trees. And that can be done through afforestation, it can be done in agriculture, it can be done by plantations. In some European countries, especially in the south, the plantations are under big pressure for various reasons. And so finding ways to planting more trees is certainly the first step. The EU wants to plant 3 billion trees, but I don't know how many have already been planted. They're probably still looking for where to plant them. So we should speed that up. The second element, I think, is when then we use the wood, we should use it in the most efficient way along the value chain. Keep it as long as possible as a material so that it stores the carbon, so that we maximize the carbon storage throughout the value chain. And the best way of ultimately getting more bioenergy is having more wood products in use, because ultimately at the end of the day, it's always going to be, there's always going to be a moment when you can't anymore use it as a material, you can't anymore recycle it, and that's the moment to have more energy recovery. And one of the big advantages for the recycling, more recycling is of course also part of this concept, is that you basically can source urban wood. You source not wood from the forest, but you source wood from the villages, from the industry, from the cities, and through that you can also shorten the supply chains. So I would say plant more trees, use the wood in the most efficient and long-term way, and recycle it as much as possible.
Just one question for you, but in a system where we encourage the reuse and the recovery of final products, this could affect in a negative way the panel producers or not?
How do you mean it could affect?
For instance, the reuse of furniture, the recovery of a product would avoid the utilization of a new panel.
Well, if you reuse much more, then of course you might need to produce less new. But that's part of the societal development. And all honesty, reusing wood is easier said than done. So there are always some quality issues and so on and so forth. But yeah, for panel industry, I think it's important to grow long term. The whole value chain. And one policy measure that could be successful for the whole value chain would be a carbon credit system, so that value would be given to the storage of the carbon in the material, and also in order to give incentive to build more with wood, to use more furniture with wood. Of course, there are challenges to the raw material supply. We are experiencing that there's more and more MDF and other fiberboard and laminate flooring coming in the waste stream, and there currently we don't really have efficient recycling processes in big volumes, but there are two EU projects, one already financed, Flow on recycling of, among others, laminate flooring, and there is another application for a project, EcoRefiber, to also try to have processes that can actually recycle the fiber from the fiberboards. So.
Just in addition, in logistic market with the pellets, they decide to lock up and to destroy the pellet after 8 years, just to maintain a small grow-up production. But they do the calculation, and to have still a production to upgrade the factories and so on, they have to destroy it up to 8 years.
Yes. Okay. Thank you very much.
I wanted to add something, because it's actually a very interesting question, seeing how if we stop the supply of certain material because downstream we keep it in use, indeed, that might not profit everyone. This is at the core of discussions we have internally. Who in the ecosystem will be a winner, a loser, or how we can make it work for everyone. I think one of the challenges that there is when considering this transition to a circular business model is just that, is not to see only how it benefits us, the company, through our internal operations, but the whole system. So including partners. Partnerships are really a key aspect, I believe, of the circular economy. How do we make sure that our partners are also benefiting from the change? I have a couple of concrete examples. So I'm not, again, maybe coming up with a solution for the sawmill or every player upstream in the chain, but looking at the assembly phase or the finishing phase, and maybe a panel maker can find some sort of value and benefit at that stage, because once the products are returned, which is a challenge in itself, then there is some work to do around this refurbishing phase, this refinishing phase before it's put back in use, sent back to the market. So there might be some solutions as far as to answer the.
Okay. Thank you, Dimitri.
Oui, juste, il faut vraiment que toutes les parties prenantes en fait évoluent vers ce changement en fait de façon de voir. C'est-à-dire que tous les maillons de la chaîne doivent être impliqués et tous les maillons de la chaîne doivent comprendre qu'ils vont gagner en fait et qu'ils vont être des gagnants. Ils vont pas être perdants de ce changement de solution. Il faut accompagner vraiment tous les acteurs pour évoluer vers une économie circulaire pour que tout le monde soit gagnant en fait dans ces schémas-là. Et c'est ça l'important et c'est ça qui fait encore plus évoluer les choses.
Merci beaucoup, Florence. Tina, if it's okay for you, I would make another different question, because the topic of the roundtable is change. And another change we are facing is about training, education, competencies, because it's one of the topics emerged during our activity and emerging in our white paper. From my experience, I had some meetings some months ago with the stakeholder of the education training sector, and one of the main issues is related not only to the lack of competencies, but the matching between offer and demand. What do you think about this issue, and what are, in your opinion, the main skills, the main competencies for a new worker, for a new figure working on the wood sector, dealing with this new circular approach? Who wants to begin? Okay, Chris.
Yeah, thank you. Skills in attracting new workforce for our industry, for the panel industry, is a challenge, primarily because we need really highly skilled technical profiles to be working in the factories. And in the factories, basically every worker has a specific job and a specific competence and responsibility, irrespective of what's the level in the company. But the people really need the good basic skills, and then they're trained in the company. But of course, we are also challenged with the higher profiles, where we need more and more to have chemical engineers, mechanical engineers, building engineers, and there we are competing with all other sectors, and that's not an easy thing to do. But the companies get to it. But generally, for more wood construction, to find solutions, I think one of the things we could try to push for is, for one of the things which we are already very much advanced, is off-site prefabrication. Because off-site prefabrication gives the very big advantage to the worker that he's in a clean environment, he's in a safe environment, he's protected from rain and wind and all these things. Plus it's a very well controlled environment, so you can also very easily train the workers on the job. But for circularity, it's also a good example, because with the off-site prefabrication, you can collect everything within the prefabrication hall, and you can optimize the reuse and the recycling of the materials. So I think pushing for more off-site prefabrication as a general concept in building, and through that to try to substitute other materials, I think this is one of the big options we have. About the question of the gentleman on how can we make sure that everybody benefits, well, that was one of the concepts that when in the past we made the first proposal to EU Commission on a carbon credit scheme, is that you give a credit to the carbon that's contained in the wood product, and meanwhile there's the wood PCR, so you can perfectly calculate it, and as long as the wood stays in the product, you have that certificate, and it could travel like the VAT on an invoice. So as long as you don't throw away your invoice, you have such a certificate, meaning that the end consumer, at the end, when he has his nice piece of wooden furniture, but he wants something else, he can bring it back and he can claim back the value of the credit that's inherent in his product. So this could be a way, and we are actively trying to convince DG Klima for taking up this concept.
Okay. About skill, I believe that we have lost a lot of skill, a lot of competency. During years and years, we built in wood. But during the last 100 years, we don't build in wood. We have a lack of competency, enormous. And this part has to really be from a new renewable, but not forget what we have done. And it's important not only to leave the software decide if this building will be good or not. We have to do calculation. We know how to make the calculation. We have to do it.
But do you think that this lack of skills is due to also a lack of offer, technical offer, education offer, or not?
No, not. I really believe that the school are really high-level ones, but not a lot of engineer comes from school, and not a lot of companions so going from school.
Okay. Thank you. Any other contribution for this, Dimitri?
Yeah, well, again, not from a technical perspective, because I'm not trained myself at that level, although I would agree it starts at school. On a side note, I heard Lynn Rosé has, I'm not so sure about the timeline, started some school precisely to address this lack of qualified labor, of highly skilled labor. So whether it's in the private sector or the public sector, I'm guessing some solutions are taking shape. Again, that's from the technical point of view, which I cannot go into details. Now, from a more general point of view, even at school, basic notions in circular economy. I remember among the many newsletters we will get, one from here in Sweden, from SB Insight, I believe, was explaining how among those many terms that get quickly technical when it comes to sustainability in general, it's not always well understood. And that sustainability, the word has been around now for quite a while. And when it comes to the circular economy, then really it's hardly understood by anybody. So I think there's, a lot of work to do as far as general education. And that's for the public at large, but also for professionals. And I have again some concrete examples in what we do at Green Furniture Concept. So when we set up those first pilot cases with services, I went out and found financial partners to offer leasing, rental, etc. When we meet people in charge of procurement from big corporations, they do not always understand even the rationality behind it. When we explain that the total cost of ownership could be at their advantage, they can benefit from a usership model. We are faced with serious, I would say, cultural roadblocks. People who, for good reason, maybe years ago, would say, oh no, leasing, rental is not interesting. But those things, those services are moving fast. So just like the industry upstream in its manufacturing is improving, all the services downstream, the way we do business has improved as well, or is improving. So there's a lot of education in general, again, public at large, but also in the business world, to understand that it is at the advantage of everyone involved.
Okay, thank you, Dimitri. I made this question just because mainly in Italy we have this, not problem, but this issue, because we have the technical offer, especially consider the strategic theme of eco-design. We are discussing about it since many years, but for example, for the point of view of some students or some companies, some technical course implemented not by universities or specialized schools are not considered as important, as significant in terms of skill increase on competence. So probably there is a problem in terms of matching between offer and demand, and in terms of considering as significant, as important, some technical courses. So this is the main reason because I made this question. Florence, you have raised your hand, I think.
Oui, non, c'est juste pour compléter. Il y a quand même des grandes écoles et des masters spécialisés après des écoles d'ingénieurs qui sont en train de se créer spécifiquement sur l'économie circulaire, sur le réemploi, la réutilisation et l'upcycling des matériaux. C'est-à-dire qu'il y a des chaires qui sont en train des chaires de réflexion avec des formations. Vous avez le groupe Unilassal avec l'école de l'environnement, le ME à Rennes qui a des formations spécifiques là-dessus. On a en Occitanie, dans le sud de la France, l'école des mines qui justement crée un master spécialisé sur l'économie circulaire et comment je réfléchis fin de vie, réemploi, réutilisation avant de créer les produits. Donc on a quand même une montée en compétences et des formations de haut niveau, donc post-ingénieur, qui se créent pour justement impliquer les parties prenantes et former en fait des jeunes directement à ces questions de réemploi, réutilisation et économie circulaire.
It's generational as well. When I say cultural, you're right. And the new generations will be more familiar with it.
Oui, mais c'est comme ça qu'on va faire, qu'on va réussir aussi à faire avancer les filières, c'est que on puisse aussi avoir des personnes dans les procédés et dans les matériaux, dans le design, dans l'architecture, qui pensent biosourcé, qui pensent réemploi de matériaux, réemploi de matériaux et de produits avant d'aller extraire ou d'aller couper les arbres de toutes les forêts du monde qui pourraient servir à autre chose.
Many thanks. Tina, I think you have other question for our panelists, I suppose.
Okay, thank you, Giovanni. So, as we are discussing about change, and I believe that woodworking sector can create a wide variety of new products that fit within the circular bioeconomy. So we have heard of a couple of examples already, but I would still be interested in hearing what kind of new uses or new products you can see for different sectors, like in furniture or packaging or well-being or something.
In the wood sector, still.
Yeah, in the woodworking sector. Now that we are, as said, we need to provide alternatives to fossil-based products, for example. Is it too difficult question?
I'm not a material scientist. I haven't thought yet of all the uses possible with the wood itself, but I believe there are many solutions indeed. We see every day wood replacing basic objects that were made of plastic or other materials. I'm guessing indeed in the packaging industry mostly.
Maybe from my side, I'm also not a material scientist, but what I do observe is that within the wood panel industry, and I'm sure within also the other sectors within the woodworking industries, there's innovation every day. New products are developed nearly every day. New surfaces, new decors, new applications, new composite materials. One of the big trends in wood panels is go light in a variety of ways. Use lighter wood, have some holes in the panels where you don't really need the solid wood, and so there is a tremendous amount of innovation. But saying which exactly new materials should be developed, I think that's a little bit synergetic as we will see opportunities in the building sector developed by the architects, by the engineers, by the designers. I'm sure that will inspire companies to find business opportunities to bring new products that can fulfill these applications. So that's what I can contribute to this question.
Okay, Jean-Claude, have you got any particular opinion on this?
Nothing to add.
Okay. Thank you very much.
Thank you.
Okay. Tina, if you have other question or not, in case we can close this round table following the example of the first one by asking to our panelists some conclusion statements. Okay, Dimitri, do you want to add something just to conclude this discussion?
Actually, I would join Orana, who spoke earlier. Information or even education is key. I mentioned the public at large. I mentioned professionals in procurement, but eventually also salespeople to understand all the rational arguments that exist behind the principles. Again, linking the circular economy principle to customer values. I'm saying this because I come from sales. I believe there's still a lot of work to do around the information education theme.
Okay, just one question to conclude. How do you see the whole certification system? This is a general question, because probably in this last period, the environmental label, the environmental certification are quite a lot. There's a bit of confusion. For instance, from the company's point of view, are them accessible? Is difficult to understand, to obtain labels, to obtain environmental labels? Because I know that the European Commission is trying to reduce the number, trying to identify the most relevant one. What is your point of view about this argument, this aspect?
Florence, tu veux commencer? Non, pas d'avis. It's another very tricky question that is up for discussion as far as the strategy that underlies every certification. In my understanding, a lot of the certifications are very regional. European certifications are probably understood mostly in Europe, maybe abroad, because the European Union is quite advanced, but I know of some certifications in Asia that companies should consider before going towards those markets. The cost of certification, of course, is, and again, I'm speaking from a small company perspective, it is a cost financially, but also indirectly. So still financially, because it takes some staff, it takes some skills to address that certification, really go point by point and see how the products, its design, its development qualifies for those certification. It's a complete different thing if you look at Möbelfakta in Sweden, which is a requirement, a basic requirement in Scandinavia to do business in the contract market. And it's another to look at B Corp, which is a huge certification now and seems very interesting as far as getting on the map as a company with a purpose, with a strong CSR policy. And then, of course, I would say they are the latest, not completely up to date on those, but the ISO standards. I believe some of the certifications in that field, when it comes to circular economy, are taking shape, but those will be, I'm guessing, also for much bigger companies because it's a much heavier process. So I think it's up to every company look at its core business, its business model, its strategy to see which one of those certification out there are the most suitable.
Okay, thank you.
I agree with Dimitri. This is really a cost for SME and the strategy policy. For our point of view, we have forgotten all the European or standard label to focus on just one, the Solar Impulse label, because it's an independent one. And it comes from Switzerland, the initiative of Bertrand Piccard, which is really different than all the other labels. But this focus costs a lot for small SME.
Okay, I can imagine.
Yes, it's difficult to see the forest through all the certification labels, so it's making things often not easier, especially not because we often see that certifications and life cycle assessment schemes are dominated by other material sectors who are trying to make it unnecessarily complicated. Or, by example, at the European level, you have both the environmental product declaration and you have the DG Environment preferred product environmental footprint. But I'm not an LCA specialist, but my LCA specialists tell me that both of these schemes are insufficiently taking into account the benefits of biogenic carbon storage. Now, what's one of the big sustainability advantages of all wood products compared to concrete, steel, bricks, other materials? it's exactly that we store the carbon that the tree captured from the atmosphere. So there, I think if we could collectively work together on improving those standards, getting them correct, it looks like DG Klima has understood the problem, but I'm not sure whether they're going to the right solution. But this is certainly something where we could collectively together work. And for the rest, I think the more we can all communicate the benefits of wood products and including the recycling and bio circular economy advantages, that's the best thing I think we can do to grow the applications for the whole wood value chain.
Okay, thank you. Sorry for interrupting the final statement. Florence, if you want to say something to conclude, okay? the roundtable, so I give the microphone to Jean-Claude just to conclude, if you have any statement to conclude the discussion.
The statement is really short. You have to think circular economy from start to the end, and in fact it's not so easy, but young people, the following generation has looked at this very particularly and they push up.
Okay, thank you. Chris, just to conclude and to say goodbye, to say hello to our public. Thank you very much.
Thank you very much, Giovanni, and to all the panelists and Tina. And to Dimitris. We have a 30 minutes coffee break leg stretch, so unfortunately there will be no virtual coffee provided to you by WoodCircus, but WoodCircus is inviting the participants today also at the forum for a coffee. Please leave your lines open and be back in, let's say, 28 minutes, and then we will continue with another very interesting discussion with a hot topic on trust. So 30 minutes leg stretch and coffee break, and see you soon. Thank you very much.
Thank you.